Hi there, it is Coach Tracy with IIFYM.com. And today I have a special guest with me, Alessia Donato. And Alessia is here to talk with us about IBS and digestive issues. Alessia works with a lot of clients who have these similar issues. And so I really wanted to bring her on because I see a lot of women posting information in the Facebook pages about the challenges that they're facing with different type of issues, whether it's IBS, Crohn's, just bloating and things like that. So, Alessia, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became to a place where you have really healed yourself and been successful with managing the IBS that you were experiencing?
Thank you, Tracy, for inviting me. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited and thrilled to be here. So I have a very long and crazy battle that I've basically lived my whole life with irritable bowel syndrome. And at the very beginning of my I think I would say my journey, I didn't actually know I had it. And I lived several years, especially my early teens, without having a clue that I actually had IBS. So before I get into that, I'm Alessia and I'm Italian. I live in Dubai. And yeah, so I'm so grateful to be here. So I kind of want to just share a little bit about my story with IBS, because I wish back then when I knew I had it, I wish maybe someone else would have shared their story. It was a very lonely time. And yeah, so basically I have always struggled with digestive issues ever since I was a very small child. And then it got worse progressively as I got older. I was basically, I worked a very stressful job when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s. I was a makeup artist and I worked crazy hours. And that's when most of my symptoms got really, really bad. I've always suffered with constipation and always had bloating and horrible, painful gas and those kinds of things. And I hit a wall around, I would say, or like when I was about 23. I'm 33 now, but when I was 23, I started, experiencing really, really chronic constipation. And I started going to see doctors, and they would just give me, the typical kind of like laxatives and the over-the-counter stuff, and telling me to like don't eat this and don't eat that, but no real concrete like step-by-step things to do to actually fix my gut. And so I took it in my own hands to start learning about nutrition and diet. And that time I really didn't know anything about food and healthy eating. I mean, it's not like I had lots of really bad habits in terms of food, but I had lots of like history with dieting, going on and off yo-yo dieting. I spent a lot of time kind of experimenting on myself, using myself as a guinea pig. And I think that kind of made things worse. And so I couldn't find any support in the traditional medical system, like the allopathic medical system. So I turned to the holistic part of healing. So I went to a naturopath at the time and homeopath as well, and they introduced me to holistic healing with food. And that's when I became very, very interested. But it was the beginning of the end, I would say, because without going too into detail and obviously rambling on, but I ended up kind of like Alice in Wonderland, where she fell in the hole. And I fell in the hole of holistic diets and functional medicine, and some things worked, some things didn't, but it took me a really long time to actually figure out how to heal my chronic IBS. And by then I had already been, told that I had IBS. And IBS is actually not really a disorder or a disease. Most people think that it is, but it's actually not. It's actually just an exclusion of symptoms. So, you go to the doctor and they say, okay, well, you don't have cancer, you don't have colon cancer, you don't have Crohn's, you don't have you don't have colitis, and you don't have irritable bowel disease. So they exclude all the like pressing, most dangerous diseases, and then they can't find really an answer. And so it's a collection of symptoms based on, specific testing, the Rome criteria. And based on, those results, they say, well, you have irritable bowel syndrome. And there is no cure because it's actually not a disease. And so because it's a collection of dietitians and nutritionists and doctors just treat the symptoms. And while that's fine, they don't actually go to the root. And so it took me years and years and years to figure out how to kind of nip it at the root rather than just keep on using the sort of symptom cover-ups with, certain diets or certain medications, certain supplements. And everybody is different, and I'm not here, to claim that I'm a medical professional, because I'm not. I am a certified nutrition consultant, which after so many years of struggling, that's actually why I decided to study, because I wanted to heal myself. And so I did, and I started experimenting on myself, the things that I was learning about kind of holistic healing, and I started eliminating things like gluten and dairy, as most of my kind of studies were telling me to do. And then I started, and I got some relief, but I was still, still struggling. Like I would feel good for a few months, and then I would go back and I would struggle again. And I suffered many years with things like hemorrhoids and anal fissures, and struggling to go to the toilet, and like really kind of, struggling to pass. And it was just always like going to the bathroom was always like such an ordeal. It was like a mission, to go to just do your regular business. And so after, experimenting and finding some relief, but not really, I started experimenting with different diets. And I went vegan, and then I went raw vegan, and then I went back to meat. And then I started experimenting with really extreme diets, things like fruitarian. I started doing fasting protocols. I was doing things like raw till 4, which I was like researching and like trying to find something that would help me. I was desperate for a solution. I was just so desperate. And then I found the paleo diet, and I got, great results, and I felt really good. But then my IBS symptoms came back. So it was kind of like I would take like 2 steps forward, and then like 5 steps back, and then like 3, and then 3 back. It was like I was never really good. And I had almost kind of given up. And around 2013, I hit rock bottom. And this was where I developed an anal fistula. And if people don't know what that is, it's and it's interesting because I would have never said this out loud a couple of years ago, but now it's so easy for me to talk about it because I wish I had found the support back then. But so an anal fistula is usually something that actually happens with Crohn's patients. So it's very unusual and rare that I had it because I didn't have Crohn's. So an anal fistula is a additional pathway that forms in the colon and in the anal canal, where it kind of grows on its side to the colon, and has an exit basically into the skin, and usually it forms like an abscess, and it gets infected, and the only real kind of solution is surgery. And by then I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I was always constipated. I was like, I'm doing everything right. Like, what is going on? Why am I not getting better? And then all of a sudden I have this, like, what is going on? And I really felt very alone. And I ended up going to this doctor in Dubai that did laser. and he could laser it shut for me. So he basically, got rid of the pathway, which is the fistula, and, sewed me up like no blood. It was like a godsend, because otherwise I would have had to have a fistulectomy, which is really, really pretty painful and really quite difficult to recover, and there's a lot of complications. So after that ordeal happened, I vowed to myself that I needed to figure out a solution. So I changed my diet entirely. But I didn't do anything drastic. I just started tracking my symptoms more. I also addressed people don't think is a big deal, but I addressed my mindset, and I addressed my emotions, trauma, things that you wouldn't think would have anything to do with your gut. I started addressing, because when I did develop this fistula, I was always very, very stressed out. I was living a very high, like super crazy lifestyle with, lack of sleep, high stress, wasn't taking care of myself. And so all these things kind of really played a big role that weren't even to do much with diet. And then I finally realized that I had to start addressing those first before I addressed my food and my habits, because those came secondary. Of course, it's important, and we can talk a little bit about that in a sec, but I really needed to look a little bit deeper. And I think right now, like when I work with people who have IBS, I see, or even just people with digestive issues, I see that there's so many other things other than diet that people aren't addressing. And doctors wouldn't address this anyway, because they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills. Nutritionists, dietitians even aren't always equipped with the right tools. Some are, and some are great. And so I decided to completely give up diets, and I started just, focusing on the basics of nutrition and not doing all these crazy protocols, jumping from diet to diet. And I ended up actually healing myself, and I, thank God, haven't had the recurrence of the fistula coming back. My chronic constipation is gone for the most part. Only kind of comes back when I'm on my cycle, which is pretty normal, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was when I did have like the worst of the symptoms. And so here I am about, I would say 10 years later, free from most IBS symptoms. And it's become a huge passion of mine to help women who do struggle with digestive issues really just tackle this gut problem, because it really is the root of most issues that people have, the gut and how it works. And like I said, I'm not a doctor. I work with, like, in conjunction with, my client's doctor. And we work on more the diet and the food and the mindset and these things to kind of really just get curious and kind of get to know your body. So that's why I'm here. And I wanted to come on here to kind of share my story, because I'm, I also believe that fitness was a huge part of my healing. And I spent many, many years kind of like struggling to kind of, hit my goals when it comes to weight loss, and even just, my fitness goals, because of my IBS. And finally, when I found that, I wouldn't say secret, because it's not really a secret, but kind of crack the code of my own body and my own healing journey, fitness was like the catalyst that really just helped so much. So I see so many women who have the fitness goals, have weight loss goals, athletes, women athletes, or just fitness enthusiasts. We're in this amazing group right now with tons and tons of women that lift weights, but also struggle with digestive issues. And they're kind of like, there's not a lot of like support in that aspect in the fitness space. So I kind of wanted to come here and maybe share my story and see if I could help in any way. So that is me, long story. But yeah.
Well, you have a lot of good information in your own personal story. And I think that, one of the things is when we share our stories and the struggles that we've gone through, that helps other individuals. And I like the fact that you basically said, you know what, yeah, I tried all of these diets. A lot of women are trying to lose weight. That's where they start, is they're trying to lose weight. But how can you lose weight when you have all these underlying issues that are preventing you from losing weight? And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about, like, initially when you got into this because of the fact that you were having digestive issues and that's what you were focused on. But from the perspective of managing weight and weight loss, what did you find out? Like, if you were trying to lose weight at the time that you were also trying to manage your IBS, did you find, like, if I do not deal with this first, then there's like you're struggling to lose weight? Like, what is some of that you took notice of? Because it sounds like you've documented a lot, and I think that that's an amazing thing as well, is documenting what's going on and what works and what doesn't work. And so, because while there's plenty of information out there about everything possible, there's also bad information, there's good information. There's not always one resource that can help you out. And sometimes you do have to experiment on yourself because you have a unique physiology. But I'd love for you to talk about the aspect of weight loss with having an IBS or digestive issue that's an underlying factor, along with the other things that you said about, I had to deal with past trauma, I had to deal with stress, I had to deal with these things, and how that correlated to weight loss and weight management.
My dog is going absolutely mental.
I got stuff to say, right?
So going back to that question is actually a really good question, because I have always struggled with weight. Not like, dramatically. I've never been obese and severely overweight, but I have always dieted and done yo-yo dieting. And I've always done, like, I've always basically been chasing this weight loss, whether it's 5 or 6 kilos, up and down. So I struggled with the most. What I figured out basically was that you can't really address, you can't go into, when you've got gut issues, especially things like chronic constipation and diarrhea, chronic diarrhea. So there's 2 types of IBS. There's IBS-D and IBS-C and IBS mixed. Most people are, one or the other, or like a mix. And basically what happens is if you don't address your gut issues, you're going to forever be struggling, because your gut is already dysfunctional. So you're not really absorbing nutrients properly. So if you do have IBS-C or IBS-D or a mix of both, you're not absorbing nutrients properly, and therefore your body is not absorbing the nutrition. So you could be eating the best diet, you could be eating, the best foods, the most nutritious foods, but not absorbing any of it. And you could be struggling, like, oh, why am I not losing weight? Or for example, that's one thing. And then there's another, aspect where so many people with gut issues have so many limitations when it comes to food. So they have like 5 foods that, are safe foods. And so if you're living on 5 safe foods, you're already not getting the nutrition you're needing. So you're already deficient in vitamins and minerals. And you know that certain vitamins and minerals, especially things like vitamin D, vitamin B12, these are really like crucial. If your body's not functioning properly, then your metabolism is not functioning properly. So it's kind of like everything's connected. And so you see that those that do have IBS-C or IBS-D or bloating, gas, or food sensitivities, they really struggle with weight loss because that underlying issue is still there. So they could be eating the best diet, they could be tracking macros, tracking calories, but still not losing weight. Or they could be, struggling to do all of those things because they're in pain, or they're not going to the bathroom, or they're going to the bathroom too much if they've got IBS-D. and they've got food sensitivities. They're not meeting their protein goals because they only have like 3 safe foods, so there's those issues. So if you are struggling with weight loss and you've got gut issues, I really strongly suggest that you first start with the gut. You start with just understanding your symptoms, tracking your symptoms, and having the patience with your body, because your gut is incredibly resilient. It doesn't take as long as you think to heal. A lot of people are still stuck, and they've been stuck for years and years and years. And that's how I was stuck for so long, because I didn't give it the time and the patience to stick with one strategy. It's kind of like, it's kind of the same as tracking calories and macros and fitness, jumping from one program to another program, thinking that, one doesn't work, oh, it's the program's fault, but usually it's not. And unfortunately, in the world where we live in now, with like overload of information, it's almost like really hard to not do that, because there's so much out there and thrown at us. And so when I would say in the worst, or I would say my rock bottom days, I was exactly where, these people were too. Like, I was in the same position. I was Googling symptoms, worst thing you could do. I was going on groups, especially like Facebook groups, gut healing, constipation groups, like all these, groups that you can find some level of support, but it's so confusing, because when you don't know your own body and you're confused and you're in pain, you are grasping at anything. And so you will grasp at any protocol, any diet, any supplement, anything to relieve that pain. And so what works for one person most definitely not work for you, because the gut is so unique. It is influenced by not just your diet, but it's influenced by your hormones. It's influenced by your lifestyle, your genetics, the way you grew up. It goes even back to when you were born, the way you've been delivered by your mother. It goes back to the microbiome and how it's developed over time. Everyone has a unique gut. And so going into these support groups or going onto these forums, it's okay to an extent, but it does more harm than good. And also mentally. So when it doesn't work, you're like, you feel just so defeated, and then there's that stress again, and then it's there again, triggering the symptoms, and there's that gut brain connection. So as soon as you start feeling crappy up here, it triggers crappy down there. So it's super connected. But when it comes to weight loss, you have to start looking underneath. It's kind of like hormones, you've got to kind of address your hormones. If your thyroid's out of whack, or your PCOS is out of whack, like all those things, if you're not going to address that, going to more like, calorie counting, macros, losing weight, that is a secondary thing, like underneath, what's underneath. I hope that answers your question. I kind of went a little off track there.
It does. I don't know why my video just disappeared. You can still hear me okay, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, that really answered the questions completely. So we have a question that came in, and the question is there a suggested enzyme versus probiotic for IBS, C, and D based on your experience or what you've researched in you with working with people?
Yeah.
So
Sure. So when it comes to supplements, so enzymes and probiotics are supplements, unless the probiotics come from food, and the enzymes, you can find them in food as well. But I'm assuming that she's talking about, the supplementary ones. There are certain, we all know you could go to a pharmacy or to a supermarket even, or a health food store, and you can find probiotics and enzymes and all these supplements like liver support, or you can find gut support, you can find cleanses, candida, all sorts of things. Now, When it comes to probiotics, they're not always necessarily advised. So the reason is because they're different. So the strains that you need are completely different for IBS-D and IBS-C. So if you've got diarrhea, dominant IBS, you need a completely different strain than the ones that you need for constipation. And if you have a mixed, it's even more complicated. So the ones that you can find in like your typical grocery stores or your typical health food stores are usually not appropriate. They're usually very weak strains. There's not enough, of a wide variety of strains, and they're not always advised. And here's why. Because you might think that you have IBS, but you don't. You might not have IBS. You might have SIBO. So SIBO is something that there's a lot more research into it, and doctors are finally now, starting to kind of test for it. But small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is very, very common, and it's very much similar in symptoms as IBS. And so I actually had it at one point, and it usually comes after a food poisoning of some sort, or when you it's mostly after infection. So you could have like, a simple food poisoning, or you've eaten something and it's given you like an infection, and you think, oh, it's just gastroenteritis or just an infection or inflammation, and you take your antibiotics and then you're all good to go, it's gone and woohoo. But then from there you start to have all these weird things happening, and then 3 years down the line you're like, oh, I have SIBO. So it's one of those things that when it comes to supplements, before you look at supplements, you need to look at the more basic things like your diet, because again, they're just supplements. So probiotics are great for repopulating the gut bacteria, and sometimes they work really, really well, but sometimes they can produce a lot of histamine reactions. They can cause more harm than good. You could be flooding if you do have SIBO, you're flooding your already filled gut with bacteria, with more bacteria. So you can imagine the kind of, party that is going on down there. So that is actually kind of throwing fuel to the fire. So if you don't know what it is you've got, first, it's really important to kind of get tested, make sure you know that you have IBS, or that you have SIBO, or maybe something else. It could be a candida overgrowth. It could be just a food intolerance or an allergy. It's so important to test, and so many people don't test correctly. They don't know how to test. They don't know how to ask for the correct tests. They go to their doctor, and their doctor just kind of tells them whatever, and then they leave and they're confused, and they're like, well, he told me this, but I have no idea and I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to try this. And then they go on these forums and ask questions. So the best thing to do when it comes to supplements is to think of supplements as like a last resort. And that's something that I actually don't do. Like a lot of functional medicine doctors or a lot of functional nutritionists focus a lot on supplements. I actually don't, unless it's absolutely necessary. But again, it's a supplement, just like fitness. It's like at the top of the pyramid. It's not the foundation. So,
well, one of the things is like, I think that you probably found, like I have found working in nutrition and stuff, is at the root of most people's problems is they're just not eating a healthy, balanced diet. So they're missing the fruits and the vegetables, which have the micronutrients, which also have the healthy bacteria, and having a spectrum of those fruits and vegetables to create that different type of bacteria within your system, because each different fruit and vegetable and stuff provides different healthy bacteria. And we're always quick to go with the pill, the supplement, the easy way, when in a lot of cases, if people just analyzed what they're currently eating and said, oh, I need to get more fruit in, oh, I need to get more green leafy vegetables in, A lot of things, like, it really becomes super simple when you focus on what you're eating, because that can heal a lot of things. That can heal gut issues. That can heal, like, if you're having headaches and things like that. Always start with your diet. What are you eating that could be affecting? Because basically, everything you put into your body utilizes in some form or fashion, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. And if you're not getting enough of something, then you're going to be experiencing a lot of these issues. So before running to the doctor and getting a test and, oh, I'm going to add this pill and I'm going to supplement, a lot of times when people turn to supplementation without having an understanding of where they're currently at, they could overdose on a supplement, and then that causes additional problems that they
Absolutely.
aren't aware of. So, we also had a question come in about fermentation and apple cider vinegar. So, what is your opinion on the apple cider vinegar and whether that really helps anything?
I'm not sure about fermentation. Or, I mean, I don't know what she wants to know. Like, I would love to know a little bit more what about it, because fermentation. So I'm thinking that she means like fermentation, like fermented drinks or fermented foods,
Which
I
you
think.
appreciate that.
Um,
Those are
and
definitely some form of vinegar.
so there's really no so there's a lot of kind of like things that you can do, but again, these are all secondary things. Like, I do that within my protocols, um, adding certain things and adding certain superfoods, but these things are always secondary. Apple cider vinegar can actually cause a lot of acidity for a lot of people. It can cause, burning sensations. It's a very strong type of vinegar, so it can trigger, stomach pain. Fermentation is, I'm guessing fermented foods, that's what she's asking. I believe that, like you said, you should include a wide range of different foods. Fermented foods are fantastic because, again, they provide those probiotics and good bacteria. But they're, again, something that, shouldn't be the basis of your diet. They should be kind of like supplements, right? So, you have a little bit every day, kind of like your vitamins. So there is something that I kind of want to, go through quickly that I think will really help, in terms of, because I'm seeing quite a lot of things like, what about this supplement and that supplement? There are certain supplements that are absolutely amazing for general health, but also to strengthen the gut. And that a lot of them are found in foods, obviously. But, if you are struggling, there are certain supplements that are going to help with strengthening the gut lining. So there's a lot of, when you have IBS and when you have a lot of issues with gut and food sensitivities, it's usually because you have quite a permeable gut. It's sort of like leaky gut. It's not necessarily leaky, but its permeability has, been compromised. So there's these kind of like little legs spirally, they're called villi, on the lining of the stomach. And so when they start to flatten, then what happens is that toxins from the outside of the stomach start entering in, and then what's in starts to enter your bloodstreams and causes these food sensitivities or allergies. So strengthening that lining is really important. And the first thing that you need to focus on is protein. And we think protein is important for weight loss, but protein is the building blocks of the cells, and so it's going to build a strong gut lining. So protein is the number one nutrient or macronutrient. The second is L-glutamine. So L-glutamine, again, is a type of amino acid, so fantastic to help rebuild the lining and strengthen it. You can use it as a supplement every day. It's also found in a lot of different foods. Zinc is very healing, very great for immunity. So that is, something that you can find a lot in fish, shellfish, meat. But then again, you can supplement with zinc. Vitamin A. super important for repairing. So if you struggle with, again, this leaky gut, or you struggle with food sensitivities, zinc and vitamin A, super, super amazing for just repairing and really rebuilding that strong gut. And omega-3 fats, again, these are amazing because they're great for inflammation. So when there is an issue with the gut, it's inflammation. So we want to reduce that inflammation. So think of, fatty fish, mackerel, salmon, flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts, and then of course supplementing with your omega-3s and probiotics. Like I said, like earlier, make sure you know exactly what you have before you start supplementing with probiotics. They're great, but they're not always necessary, and they're not always needed for certain issues. I can see that there's some questions coming through.
Yeah, so when as far as the apple cider vinegar, using apple cider vinegar for digestive health. And like you said, it causes additional acids, which can break
Yeah,
down the lining, which can cause
yeah,
more problems. I think that apple cider vinegar is one of those myths that need to die as being a helpful supplement. There will be people that will tell you it's amazing and all this stuff. I think that, you can get to a place where you believe things work for not the reasons that they work, because you could be doing other things that, like if you say, oh, I'm using apple cider vinegar, but you have to put the apple cider vinegar with something else to make it not taste gross. Maybe that's the thing that's actually helping you out, because you don't know, because you've added too many things. And we know that, like, the acid can break down enamel on your teeth, and there's a lot of different things. So I
it's just a small thing that
yeah,
really, on the bigger scheme of things, doesn't really do anything.
yeah.
Yeah,
So the other thing is,
this is a
if
great
I
question. Next
yeah,
question.
if I get more if I get more food, say kale, and my gut bloats tremendously and I have bad gas, can I add enzymes to help with digestion, or are you suggesting avoiding that food with other basic separations? I
Yeah,
forget.
so it's like cauliflower and those kinds
Yeah.
of fruits. So that's
Okay.
actually a really, really great question, because it addresses one of the common questions that I get a lot is, eating healthy makes me gassy and bloated, and I actually feel worse eating healthy. So when I say eating healthy, like salads and kale and quinoa and, all these amazing foods that we want to kind of put in the healthy kind of box, but also fiber, because fiber is, it's a very misunderstood kind of nutrient. I mean, it's not really a nutrient, but it's very misunderstood. And right now, in this time as well, in the health and fitness space, there's a huge kind of divide between we've got the rise of the keto and the carnivore crowd, and we've got the vegans. And it's funny because I used to be vegan, and I can actually give a little bit of a background when it comes to eating very, very high plant foods, or primarily plant foods. It's not always recommended. So it's not actually always recommended for those with IBS. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of low FODMAP diets, diets that are very heavy plant-based, or the whole food plant-based movement, that talk about the diversity of different, the microbiome diversity, and adding lots of different plants, prebiotics. Fiber is important, but it's not necessarily very well tolerated with people who have gut issues. And that's again going back to the blanket kind of like treatment, like saying that one diet fits everyone, or one diet is going to fix all your problems. If you do have, or if you struggle with very fibrous foods, kale being one of the most fibrous foods out there, very tough. If you just pick up a kale leaf, it's just, you can barely chew it. You have to kind of go back and think about the way our digestive system is built. So our digestive system is very it's quite long. If you think about it, it's super long. Like I think laid out, it is almost as big as a football field. And when I say football, I mean soccer in America. So it's huge if you lay it out. So the surface area of your digestive system is incredibly large, but when it's inside of you, it's all intertwined. And so fiber, what the role does is that it helps to kind of clean out unwanted food, and it helps move things through. It helps draw water in, helps you go to the bathroom. But if you have a slow motility or very slow digestive system, what it's going to do is it's going to draw all that water around into your colon, and then it will become like a hardened kind of mass, and then you can't pass it. So you can, and then what it does is the longer it sits there, it forms gas, because you've got all the bacteria starting to ferment and eat and ferment. And it's not actually you producing the gas, it's the bacteria. So you've got this bacteria fermenting and it's being stuck in there. And so it's not the best thing to do to have a very high fiber diet. So what I would suggest is that you keep like a food log of all the foods that you're eating, and really work on like writing down exactly how you're feeling, what time it's like a food diary, very thorough food diary. And you make sure that you track your symptoms at all times of the day, and start eliminating those foods that are giving you issues, and eliminate them for a week, 2 weeks, and then reintroduce them, and then see if they still give you issues. Now with kale and spinach and greens, not lettuce so much, but like those harder, darker leafy greens, grains, very high fiber grains, there are certain ways you can prepare them that will help digestibility. So for example, with kale, avoid raw kale. Just avoid it. So in general, people with IBS or people with gut issues shouldn't really eat a lot of raw foods. It's too hard to process, I still have issues when I have a very high amount of raw foods. Like when I was vegan, I used to have all these salads with all these different things in there. It was just too much on my gut. So just, try to cook it, break down the fibers. Sometimes blending helps, but then what happens with blending is that the blender has pre-digested it for you. And so by the time you're drinking it, you're not actually releasing the enzymes in your mouth and your saliva that kickstart digestion. So you're skipping sort of like the first part of digestion. So I don't recommend blending. So avoid throwing in those greens in your blender. Like cook them down as much as you can and avoid them raw. Because you'll get bad gas because they're fermenting. They're very tough to digest, and they're fermenting in your gut. So you don't have to necessarily avoid the food, but see if you can tolerate it with its cooked, if it's cooked. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I think that people with the digestive issues don't have a clear understanding is cooking the vegetables and things like that are easier to process. And a lot of people do have an issue with the cruciferous vegetables and things like that, your kales and your broccolis and your cauliflowers and stuff like that. And beyond bloating and making you feel uncomfortable, gas is not a really bad thing. It's to the point like that's your body's natural process of what it's supposed to do. So if you're having gas, as long as it's not excessive, that's a normal process that you should be experiencing. It tells you your body is working appropriately. So beyond all of that, what are some of the things that you have implemented for yourself or working with people that you have found are like the top 5 things that are always coming up about IBS and digestive issues? And how did you resolve them for yourself, or how did you help someone else with resolving them?
So I would say that I have I went through kind of different phases. So it's not like I did everything, you know, in order to heal myself. I went through different phases, back and forth. Some things worked, some things didn't. But there was sort of like a pattern that I realized after several years that I sort of kind of broke down and put together. And that's how now I work with you know, the people that I work with, help through that. So the first thing is, you know, the first thing you want to really do is that you want to control your symptoms, because when your symptoms feel out of control, you're in pain, you're in discomfort, you really don't know what's going on, and it all feels just like a mess. You want to start bringing a little bit more control, and the only way you can have control is that you get curious about your body. You start thinking, okay, this is my mission. Like, I want to know exactly what is going on with my body, and you have to track. You have to start paying attention. And it requires effort, and it does require you to kind of slow down. So if you have a very crazy lifestyle, you're very busy, that is going to prevent you from, you know, sitting down and really taking that time for yourself and really tracking. So keeping a food diary was a huge thing for me, and I do let all my clients do the same. So it's the first thing you want to do is just, you know, improve your quality of life by controlling those symptoms. So once you have a hold of those symptoms, you really kind of understand. And the first kind of line of defense is somewhat of an elimination diet. And this is something that a lot of people get, you know, confused with, or they mess up big time, because they start eliminating foods, but then they don't reintroduce them. So I've seen clients, or I've seen even friends, that literally have done low FODMAP for like 3, 4, 5 years. I'm not even kidding. So things like those, you know, low FODMAP diets, which is very, I mean, it's very popular and it's also very effective, but you're not supposed to be on it for the rest of your life. So you've got to, you know, make sure that you have someone that can help lead you on these elimination plans, because you could be facing deficiencies, you know, food deficiencies that will further aggravate the entire situation and keep you stuck. And then you're not eating, and then you have 6 foods that you can tolerate, and everything else gives you issues. So you've got to know what you're doing when you're doing these elimination diets. But first things first is really getting curious about your symptoms. Start like really digging deep and looking at, you know, what is going on, like your symptoms, your bowel movements, how food affects you, how it affects your mood, your hydration. Are you eating enough protein? Just start getting curious, you know, just start taking track. And you can start also in this, like at the beginning, you can start helping yourself with certain things. Like if you do struggle with digesting protein, then maybe add in some beta-ine HCl, or like acids that will help promote stomach acids, supplements that will help promote stomach acid. Those kinds of things will help relieve the symptoms, and you can start taking digestive enzymes. They're not bad. Someone asked them before. Digestive enzymes are great, but don't rely on them, because what people do is they'll rely on them, and then their body doesn't produce them anymore. And so if you're out of digestive enzymes, then what are you going to do? So you're again using it as a crutch, right? So number 1, curious about your symptoms.
Yeah. So I love, like, the biggest thing that you said was document. You've got to document. You've got to put in the effort, because you can't just eliminate food and not track what's going on. It sounds like a lot of work, but would you rather put the work in up front to really resolve your issue, or would you rather be 3, 4 years down the road still struggling and still trying to figure out what's going on?
Yeah.
Now, as far as digestive enzymes, great digestive enzymes that are not pills, pineapple and papaya.
Yeah.
So have those after a meal if you're having issues. Just eat that after a meal. And then also having the fermented foods, your, kefir, your sauerkraut, things like that, they can help with that digestive. And then, of course, always documenting, because
Yeah.
there could be foods that you can bring back in. And then I think the other thing that you have to be aware of is your sensitivities to foods can change. So you could be eating the same foods over and over again, and then your body becomes sensitive to it, and then you start having problems. And then maybe if you pull out some of those foods for a while and change your foods, then your sensitivities will go away. I have a friend who's a bodybuilder, and typically bodybuilders will eat the same foods. And so she became sensitive to the chicken, the eggs, chocolate, coffee, like across the, I was basically like, what are you going to eat here? And so by her doing like tests to check for her sensitivity and removing those, now here she is a couple years later, and she can eat those foods again and not have the same issues. So you got to understand that when you don't have that flexibility of nutrition and eating different foods, you might be causing some different issues that you might not be aware of. But I think it's key that it's about documenting where you are at as a person, because no one has the same metabolism, the same body structure as you do. And so you have to use yourself as a self experiment to see how your body works. So you can't just have somebody say, this works, this works, this works. And if you've ever tried to find anything about anything on the internet, you know that there's going to be like 20 resources that give you crap and like two that might be good. But if you don't get past the 20 resources that are trying to market to you garbage that doesn't work, you're not going to get to your answers. So that's important. So what is another thing that you recommend or have seen with dealing with the IBS and digestive issues?
So the second step that I would suggest, once you've gotten, you've gotten tested and you know what's going on and you've got a little bit more insight into your, symptoms, and, you've calmed a little bit of that inflammation, you can start repairing the gut. So this is where, this is where you can start, trying things, but make sure that, like you just said, like, don't just go and try everything and then keep hopping from one thing to another, because it's like program with fitness hopping. You're never going to get any results. Excuse me. You're never going to get any results if you keep going from one strategy to another. So, you do your low FOD map, and then you jump from that and you go to vegan, and then from that you do carnivore, and then from that you do something else, and you do another type of elimination. Like, try and stick to one strategy and see it through for a little while. Give it at least 6 months. So when it comes to repairing your digestion, that is that repairing that lining. And again, that first thing you need to do is look at your diet. So I constantly see people that do have IBS in a lot of groups, and even the clients that come to me, that they still are eating not nutritious food. They're still eating junk food and processed foods. This is just going to create more damage. It's going to create more inflammation. A high sugar diet is going to create that gut microbiome imbalance. So you want to start looking at, simplifying your diet, but not simplifying in the sense of getting rid of things that are nutritious, but you want to actually just bring in the nutrients in terms of having those meats, protein, high protein diet, vegetables, fruit, just natural foods as much as possible. You don't need to go vegan. You don't need to do extreme plans like keto. You don't need to do anything that is extreme. You just need to be balanced, eating real food, protein-rich food. Protein, I can't say it more than like once or twice. It's so important, protein, because it's going to help that build that strong gut. And then all the other things that I mentioned, like zinc, vitamin A, B12, vitamin D, omega-3 fats, they're all found anyway in real food, right? So if you're getting a really strong diet with real food, then you're probably eating a lot of nutrient-dense foods anyway. And if you're not, start doing that. Start adding, start giving that your gut the nutrients that it needs. And really, there are certain things that kind of help with repairing the gut, like bone broth. It's still, kind of like some people think that it works, some people think that it doesn't. The reason why it mostly works is because it's soothing to the gut. So bone broth would be a better, thing like to sip on rather than Diet Coke, So having bone broth rich in collagen is going to help repair the gut lining, put some L-glutamine in there, and it's just a great nutrient-rich, very high in vitamin A and zinc. So again, it's those nutrients that are in there that are going to help feed the gut. So those are the things that I would, really suggest my clients to do, and you guys as well, is like soothe that inflammation, get those nutrients in, make sure that you're eating a really good whole food diet, and just focus on eating the best food that you can. Think of it as, it's not a diet. Just think of it as you're feeding your body what it needs, because that's how it's going to build that strong gut and immunity and all the, the nutrients that it needs to build. Nourishing is nourishment. Like that's a big one. You're not going to get any nourishment from processed foods. Although they're fun. And, I'd like to say something about that, because when I was in the throe of my worst IBS, I could not eat bread. I could not eat dairy. I was always getting, flare-ups. And now that I've strengthened my gut, I can get away with eating, fun foods here and there, and I'm okay. But when I start doing too much and overdoing it, it's like that overgrowth of bad bacteria and the symptoms kind of flare up a little bit. That's when I know I have to go back to my, nutritious diet. And also avoiding triggers like alcohol, big trigger. One as well. In terms of food, everyone has their own triggers, so I can't really sit here and say like avoid this food, that food, but I do find that a lot of people struggle with very high fiber foods, alcohol, and lots of artificial sugars, sugar alcohols, and those are found a lot in like protein powders and like protein bars and things like that. Those kind of quick foods, again, they're really just processed foods. So you might struggle. Like I still get flare-ups when I have them, because they're just a trigger. So knowing your triggers is a big one. It's really important.
Well, it's the difference between like, if you reach for those convenience foods, those quick and those easy things, it's convenient today, but you'll pay for it tomorrow. So
Absolutely.
while you think that it is so much easier to grab a convenience food, in a lot of cases, the preparation of that convenience food could roughly be around the same preparation as grabbing a whole food and having that available to yourself. Whether you do a meal prep one day where you cut up a lot of vegetables and cook a lot of whole proteins and have fruits available like on your counter and stuff, so you easily can grab those things. Really, the preparation of whole healthy foods is just as easy as grabbing something as convenience. It may be a little upfront work. And really nowadays, well, I don't know about nowadays, everybody's at home and can't leave the house. But nowadays, everywhere you go, it would seem, at least it is in America, so I hope it is in where you're at. But nowadays, you can walk into any grocery store, gas station, or whatever, and there's a whole section of already pre-prepared stuff. Fruits and vegetables that are cut up, eggs that are ready to go. You can go to deli counters and grab your meats and stuff. There's already prepared, like you can go get chicken breast already cooked, cut up, and ready for you to eat. So having the excuse of like, it takes too long, it's too much effort to eat these whole foods, not today, not in this day and age. Everything is available for you if you make that choice, versus saying, I'm going to go through a drive-through and I'm going to get fast food, which is not going to support my goals. Whether it be that it doesn't support your goals health-wise, or it doesn't support your goals of be getting to weight loss, because these are higher calorie foods that might not be benefiting us. And I think that one of the things that is important to say that you said was that I had to initially eliminate some of these foods from my diets because they were causing problems. And now I'm able to get away with eating some of them, because I think that a lot of people, when they look at the foods that they're eating, and especially when you go to, IFYM, you can eat anything you want as long as it fits your macros. There are just some cases that you are that unique individual that has to remove something from your diet. And I think that people get into the mindset of, you're taking stuff away from me. So they look at it from the perspective of like a negative mindset of, you're taking away, versus what are they gaining from eliminating those foods so they can become whole and healthy and get away from being overweight, having health issues, improving health markers, not having digestive issues. It's across the board, but I think that everybody is like, don't take my foods. I enjoy these foods. So I always find it funny that when I talk to somebody who has a digestive issue or a concern about that, is they'll say, I ate this food and it makes me sick. And I'm like, why do you eat it? Because I love this food. Well, it does not love you. So why would you continue to do something that is not benefiting you? We all know what these foods taste like. So you should
And
probably
they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. Those foods are always going to be there.
Yeah. And at a different time in your life, you might be able to eat those again, but you don't know if you don't take care of the underlying problems. And I think that that's one of the things that, is important is, you talked about dealing with stress and keeping food journals and things like that, and the self-care aspect that I think that people miss out on, that's so important. High cortisol levels from stress, not getting enough sleep, along with just not being able to lose weight or make progress because you have underlying digestive issues. Those play a factor in whether you make progress losing weight anyway as well. So if you're not cleaning up those areas of your life along with your nutrition, then it's always going to be a struggle for you to reach those weight loss goals. And really, we talk about a pyramid because we're used to a pyramid, and maybe people are not used to that. But at the bottom of a pyramid is, we are like, it's adherence. And then anything as you go up becomes unimportant. So for us, we say adherence, nutrition, calories, and what have you. And so that's why supplements are on the very top, because if you don't adhere to your diet, if you don't adhere to your nutrition, it doesn't matter what supplements you're taking, because it's not going to work for you. So I think it's important to really put like self-care at that bottom level too, because if you're not addressing issues that are underlying issues, where it's a past trauma, where like all of those, because what happens if I don't address issues that are triggers for me when I'm stressed out, I'm going to go back to these foods that don't do anything for me. And then you completely keep repeating the process, which is part of this whole diet of yo-yo dieting, is we keep doing the same things expecting different results, because no one wants to deal with the problems that they have because it's too hurtful. But one of the things that you have to understand is, when you have a lot of underlying issues that are going on and you don't deal with them, they just compound and they always will blow up. Whereas if you face them head on, whether you do it through journaling, whether you do it through counseling, whether you do it through self-reflection, once you've dealt with that issue, it loses all the power in your life. It doesn't become a trigger for stress eating. It doesn't become a trigger for you like to blow up and become highly stressed again, because you've addressed the issue, you dealt with it. And yeah, some things are super painful. People that mistreat you, abuse that's happened, self-abuse that's happened. But if you address them, they have no power over you anymore. And you can really help just like heal your life across the board. Because at the end of the day, you know what? You can focus on nutrition all day long, but if you don't deal with those issues, you will find yourself cycling back to the weight gain that you tried to lose for many, many years. So I know that I think you have one last area or one last step to healing. So I'd love to hear what that last step is.
Yeah, so it's basically what you just said in terms of excuse me, really dealing with what's going on underneath that isn't nutrition related. Because when I was in the worst of the worst, when I had that fistula, when I had the worst of my IBS-C, I was in I wouldn't say abusive relationship, but I was in a mentally abusive relationship, emotionally abusive. I was under so much stress with work. I was in a corporate job at the time, and I was just overloaded with work. And what I was doing at that time was escaping. So I was finding ways to not have to deal with those issues. And I was always diet. Like, what can I do? What can I do? You know, that had nothing to do with those things. And then I had to really address them. And then luckily things kind of worked out, because I ended up leaving that job and having a lot more time to myself, and a lot of time to reflect and really kind of dig a little bit deeper. And things ended up, ending with that person, thankfully. And I realized just how much that played a role in my IBS symptoms, because connection, very strong science now to confirm that. 80% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So if you are struggling with, again, I'm not a professional in this sense at all, but if you are struggling with things like depression, anxiety, high stress, even just emotional issues, that first thing is your diet, right? Get your diet right, because again, you've got to be absorbing those nutrients, those precursors, those enzymes that will help strengthen your immune system, but will also help. Certain vitamins like B12, vitamin D, they're hormones, so if you're not absorbing them, they're not getting to where they need to go, right? And then start looking deeper. It's hard to, tell everyone to get rid of stress, because we live in a very stressful world. So I don't like calling it reduce your stress. I kind of like to use a more like stress perception. So finding ways where you can perceive stress in a different way. So processing stressful moments and situations, processing things and emotions instead of bottling them up. I know that a lot of moms struggle to take time for themselves because they're feeling guilt over leaving their kids, or they're feeling guilty because their husband feels left out, or even just their husband's not on board, like with the whole, healthy eating thing, and they are desperately in need of that and they don't have the support. But remember that you are in control of yourself and your body. And you've got to decide for yourself whether you really do want to change and whether you really do want to heal. You can't, like you said, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So that is really the definition of madness or insanity. So if you have been, neglecting yourself, and you've been neglecting, certain things that pop up, and even by taking that time to get curious about your symptoms and your mood swings and, how food affects you, you might realize that, certain foods give you a certain you're eating, stressed at your desk, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not the food. Maybe it's because I'm so damn stressed that while I'm eating, I'm stressed out, that food's not even digesting properly. So there's things, that you can realize really address food and your food diary, but also addressing your, stress levels and trauma, and like just looking a little bit deeper than just food. I think that this is the biggest area that people miss. And that's what you just said. It kind of goes back to the weight loss. It's like it's a chain reaction. So if you keep doing the same thing, it's not the food, it's not the diet, it's not the training program, it's how you are perceiving things and how you are dealing with it. And if you're using food as that crutch, or if you're not, really following through and making that effort for yourself. You are your, you know yourself the most, right? So once you know yourself the most, the deeper you know yourself, the easier it becomes to say, no, that's not good for me. That is not going to work. That's bad. That is not good for me. And we all have these moments of emotional eating, and, emotional eating comes up a lot with women and their menstrual cycle and all of these things. But when you do have gut issues, you need to decide what's more important. Like, do I really want to feel absolutely awful for the next couple of days? Is it really worth it? Is this, binge drinking at the weekends worth it? Because the next couple of days, I'm going to be on the toilet for I don't know how long, or, is this pizza worth it right now? That you're lactose intolerant. Don't go there. Find another something else, find a replacement. Like, you just have to kind of be honest with yourself. And I had to be honest with myself as well. I had to look at myself and say, look, like, I really love this food. Do I need it? No. Do I want to feel terrible? Like, what's worse? Like, I just take myself back to that time where I was suffering with the fistula. The pain that I went through was just not worth it, to have the foods that were triggering me. So dealing with those things is something that nobody wants to do, but we have to do it. And that is really kind of the cherry on the cake. And sometimes it's all it takes. Sometimes that one thing is what changes everything. Addressing those emotions can change everything. Very, very, very important. I've just noticed someone asking about protein shakes, thinking that they're bad for you. They're not necessarily bad for you. They're just, there are some really great brands out there that are really clean. You just have to find what works for you. Just, again, going back to that, getting curious about symptoms, and what's going on in your body, and just trying to find what works for you.
Well, and I think that's the thing is, you've been in the Facebook groups. What is one of the big things? People are like, what protein bar do you like? What protein powder you like? Everybody has their own opinions on what they like for themselves. But at the end of the day, no one asks about the ingredients, what's in here, and a lot of protein powders and a lot of bars and stuff have fillers in them, fillers to make you feel full. That is not protein. They use a lot of different things. And if you don't make the effort to really investigate the ingredients that are in the convenience foods that you're eating, that's where it can become an issue for you. So you really got to think about, like, what is in here? Is it an artificial sugar? Is it a sweetener? Is it a sugar alcohol? What are the things that are in here? Because that might be your trigger personally. So getting like, well, this one makes me feel bad. Like, really understanding like ingredients that are in there. I would say that, like, if you're looking for information on supplementation, huge resource, exam.com. Exam.com is a unbiased resource. They will not take money to be sponsored by any supplement company. They're 100% across the board unbiased. So go there. You want to know how to take it, what the effects are, what the that's where you go, besides talking to your doctor, which your doctor would probably be your best resource. I think that one of the things that, is very important is we talked about elimination. We've talked about investigating you as a person and documenting and dealing with the underlying pieces of what's going on with your life. That while, most women who are part of this page are looking to lose weight, we've yo-yo dieted for years. Challenges is if you're not willing to focus on what you're eating, if you're not willing to put in the effort to be eating a balanced diet and really identifying where you're lacking in your nutrition, and you keep going through those pills and you keep jumping from diet to diet, you're going to be years in and still having the same challenges. And, as you can see, we talked about how long it takes to really get to a place where you understand. Like, people want, like, hey, can I do it in a week? No, it's going to take weeks, months, maybe a year, like, to
Yeah.
clean everything up. It can take a while, but when you get there, you have freed yourself from the control of what's going on with your body, and you're taking active steps to manage your own health care, because you're going to find a bunch of stuff out there, and there are plenty of people looking to take your money in the fitness and nutrition industry. That's what it's about. It's about marketing. It's about selling you stuff, supplements and things like that you probably don't even need to be
Can
healthy.
I just say something as well? You've
Yes.
really hit on something amazing. There is even just in and I'm not here to kind of diss other nutritionists and dietitians, but even in they are out there, like especially functional medicine doctors, functional nutritionists, Chinese therapy, acupuncture, like all these holistic healing, which is great, but a lot of them are so heavily focused on expensive tests and expensive supplements, and you don't need to do that to heal yourself, because we never used to have that. If you think about it, like back in the days, we didn't have all these expensive supplements and all these expensive herbs and testings. Like, what did we do? We ate nutritious food, we exercised, we took care of ourselves, and we took care of our also emotional health. Like, those are the things that are the most important. So if you do go out there and you do, perhaps get some help, and you feel stuck, maybe you've already done this where you've seen a functional medicine doctor and you've walked out with a massive bill of, 10 supplements that you need to be taking. I would really consider, being a bit more skeptical about that, because that is not your first line. That should not be like, oh, take this supplement to heal this and this supplement to work. It's not the right way to do it. It's just going to leave you broke and probably worse off than you were before. So start addressing, the things that you have control over, and things that have proven and will always be proven to work.
Well, and I think that it's important to say also ask
Yes.
questions. Like, don't just go like somebody hands you and says, you need this test, this test, this test, this supplement, this supplement. Why? Why do
Yeah.
I need that? Is there another way? Could I just have some fish? I'm like, will that solve like, can I get my omega-3s like that? Can I have some nuts instead of having to take this supplement and then ending up with like this full, like 30 pills you're taking a day and you still feel like crap? I mean, like, really, like, question the things that people tell you. We are too quick to believe anything we're told. We really are. We're like, oh, apple cider vinegar, that helps with your gut. Why? Why? Tell me why. Tell me what
Nobody you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself, you're going to believe everything anyone out there, and it's going to lead you down that rabbit hole. It's just gonna confuse you. So learn to trust yourself, learn to trust your body and listen to your body, and you are your best doctor. Like, really, you are. And you can get help, external help, but nobody will be better than you, because you are the one living in your body. So, like, questioning is such a big one. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, we take too much at face value. People work with coaches because they're like, give me the answers. Like, people come to me and they'll be like, what do you think my optimum, fitness is, or my optimum metabolism? I don't know. Why don't you tell me what you think? Like, tell me what your experience has been, because I can't tell you what your metabolism is. I can give you guidelines. And basically, as coaches, What we are doing is we're taking all the pieces of information and creating a package of, like, if you come to me, ask this question, I've got this answer for you. Do I know you specifically when you put like a paragraph in a Facebook post about, like, hey, I ate this food and I feel uncomfortable. What do I do about it? I don't know. I
That's
don't
what we
know what your problem is.
yeah.
That's not enough information. That's like, hey, so, I did this one thing and it hurt. Okay, well, don't do that then. Like, I don't know what the history is. So it's hard to give like blanket advice. And, you'll see on the Facebook post, it'll be like, somebody will be like, is this right? And then you got like 20 different people and they've got like just all these opposing views. And I'm like, you didn't ask enough questions. Like, you didn't try to ask, like, well, what were you doing? And like that, I think that that's one of the challenges outside of, IBS and digestive issues, is that we find a calculator, we get some numbers, and we hop into a diet. But there's no like, hey, have you been dieting for like 10 months already? Have you been like, did you, do a keto and now you're trying to do IFYM? Like, there's no background history. And
Yeah.
without the background history, you can just grab numbers. Are they appropriate for you? Maybe if you've never dieted before and you're just getting started, or maybe you've, taken 5 months off from a diet and you've been eating a lot, then that might be appropriate. But if you've already been dieting for 10 months and then now you're trying something else because you plateaued on that diet break time. Like, that's the thing that, like, and then people just say, well, you did this and you need to do this. And it's like, you've got to know more information. You've got to give more information, because if you want people to help you, they've got to have information. And at the end of the day, it's all about data. What is the data? And I think it's important that, like, you've collected data over like your whole, like, I've
And
got to
you
figure out what's going on. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to do this for a month and that's going to solve it all. It took a while to get to that place.
It probably could have taken a lot less if I hadn't, hopped around so much and, made those mistakes that everyone, makes. We all have been there. We've all made those mistakes. So I don't think anyone needs to feel bad if they're still stuck, but you're not stuck. Like, IBS is not a life sentence. That's kind of like one thing I say a lot, it's not a life sentence. You can get rid of it. You can heal it. Again, it's just symptoms. It's not a disease. And even if you do have something else, there is a solution. Your body is incredibly resilient. I can see someone saying that they're like feeling that they shouldn't have asked questions. Absolutely not. You're fine. I'm so glad that you've asked questions. We want questions. It's good. It's good. We want questions. We're here to answer your questions. What we were just, discussing is that you just have to be a bit more aware of asking questions without context, like going into a group, not knowing, no one's going to know your history. Like, Tracy, you just said, like, there's no background. So you're expecting answers. Of course you are, because you're in pain and you're uncomfortable and you want help. But I mean, it's like when you think of going to the doctor, you have to make an appointment. You have to go in there. You have to sit there and you have to tell him everything. And if you go in there without being prepared, without, your history and your symptoms, and he asks you questions, like, he needs to know, him or he, whatever, her or him, sorry. You will know, like, that you need to, give them information. If you don't have that information, then how are you going to dig, and how are you going to put the pieces together? So and this brings me actually to this point where I've helped quite a few people do this correctly, is have a really productive doctor's appointment, because so many people have no idea how to ask the right questions, how to demand, more attention from their doctors, because doctors are just like, okay, in and out, like, what can I prescribe you? That is what they're told to do. That is unfortunately the way the system is set up. Very rarely you will find a doctor that will take time. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you are lucky. So with all that information from your digging, from your getting curious, your food journal, knowing your body inside and out and saying, I need this test, I have this, and I need that. So that is why you need to know context, and why we don't recommend going into groups and asking like, what should I take for this? Because again, we don't have that background. So that is why I'm a huge believer in being really, really wary and cautious of coaches and even dietitians or nutritionists online, or whatever, coaches, consultants that give out very blanket prescriptions, like they say you should eat this, or anyone with a specific dietary dogma, like you should be vegan or you should be carnivore. Just stay away from those kinds of people, because they do have something to sell, and it's usually never based on you. It's based on what they believe that it's worked for them, so they think it's going to now work for everyone. So just be careful with that.
Well, and I think that one of the other things is, when we talk about like a coach with a specific dogma, a lot of times when you work with a coach that has a specific dogma of like, this is the way you should eat, or this is the way you trained, I think that that's indicative of they don't have a lot of experience with a lot of different clients. Because I would say when I first started coaching many, many years ago, everybody was told to eat like I did, and everybody got the workout plan I was doing because that's all I knew. But after working with clients for so many years from all different types of populations, now I'm like, that's not the best route for you. This might work better for you. And so I'm now more of like, I started out as a clean eater. I was all about the clean eating and eating. Like, now I'm like, I do not eat clean. I eat whole foods with a balance of nutrition in there. But I think that that's one of the things is you find those people that are stuck in their dogmas. And here's the other thing is we will go towards the people that believe the things that we believe. So if you're somebody who follows if it fits your macros, you're going to follow all the people that do if it fits your macros. If you're a keto person, you're going to be like keto, keto, keto. And every resource you look at is about keto until someone challenges that way of thinking. So it's indicative that you do get into this mindset and this dogma of like, this is the best way to do it. But I think that, through this discussion, there are a lot of ways that you can do things, and it's personal to you. But we love all the questions that came from it. And really, with working with a coach, the thing is we just like a coach that has a good amount of experience, they're able to either take the information and give you like some feedback about what a recommendation might be able to do, or they will refer you to someone else. So in the case of like IBS and digestive issues, if someone comes to me asking about that, I'm going to go, Alyssa, can you help this person? Because she has experienced IBS. She's worked with people with IBS. She's dealt with these digestive issues. She's gone through all the steps that it takes to self-diagnose to get her there. So while as a coach, I, of course, want to work with a wide range of clients, and I also realize, and coaches like across the board, and some of the bigger names is they have a team of people they work with. There are people that you just refer out to. And as a coach, we work with doctors. We work with doctors who have those skill sets. So, while you go to the doctor for, healthcare, sometimes they don't have the nutritional background because that's not something they studied, or they have a brief amount of it. So working with a different people that can address your specific issue is highly beneficial. So that is like across the board. So it's not always one person that can help you. It might be 2 or 3 people that can help you, or that you should be working with to address that. So, if you have thyroid condition, you should be working with an endocrinologist. That's what they do. Why would you go, if your car is broke, you don't go to like a golfer and ask them to fix your car. No, I mean, like, you find the resource that is specific to your issue, but then you also question. So being very smart about asking questions about why. Don't accept things at face value. Ask why. So
Mhm.
that's why it's like, when somebody says, "Oh, I did this detox and I did this diet and this stuff works." Tell me why it works. Like, I want to know why it works, not that it just worked, because everything could work. Who knows? So,
Yeah.
we have had a fantastic discussion, and it's been like an hour and a half. I'm super excited. So, Alessia, is there any final like words that you have that you'd like to share with the group? I want to say that if you guys have additional questions after this live is over, please go ahead and put them into the comments in the chat and stuff. Alessia is obviously on the IFYM women's page, and she would be more than happy to help and give recommendations and stuff. Like we have said, we're obviously not doctors, we're not registered dietitians. That is not our scope of practice as coaches. But what we can do is give you resources, we can give you guidance, we can give you recommendations to help you, but you should always be working with your physician or whoever you're working with as far as healthcare, to make sure that even if I gave you a recommendation or Alessia gave you a recommendation, that you check with your doctor to say, what do you think about this? And get the buy-in from them, because really those are your primary people that you should be getting information from. But we're here to just kind of break through some of the crap that's out on the internet to kind of help you get down to those really important things that are going to help you heal your gut and
Mhm.
help you see success with feeling better. And if your goal is weight loss, which many women's goals are, is help you reach that goal as well.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I really, really enjoyed just coming on here and just sharing a little bit about my story, but also giving you hope, because I think what happens is the most when it comes to gut issues, they affect your quality of life so much. It's not really just about weight loss or aesthetics. It's really about your day-to-day quality of life. And when you are in pain or discomfort, it really does affect you on so many levels. So getting the right support, and even if it's just someone who understands and can really listen is huge already, because you already feel alone. So if you are maybe struggling with deeper issues, what Tracy said, get tested, make sure you're working with someone who can help you. But also don't forget that there are professionals out there, coaches that can help you break down things, like, okay, now you've got your diagnosis, now what next? How can I change my diet? Like, what do I do? Your doctor's not going to have the time to tell you how to do that. So getting that help, getting that support, sometimes is all you need, is just someone, because we all know really what to do. Then why don't we do it? It's because we're missing the accountability, the support, someone to hold our hand, someone to break things down for us, because life gets busy. And sometimes you really do need someone to just say, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and to still believe in yourself, because you can heal, can get better. You're not destined to not be able to enjoy food. This is something that I cannot stress enough, because I'm such a big foodie, and I really find that there is nothing worse when you're out with your friends or your family or loved ones and you can't enjoy just life because you are in pain or discomfort, or this food just doesn't sit well with me, or it gives me gas, bloating, whatever. So that certain foods give you issues. So I get it, I get it that it can be really stressful sometimes, but really just believe that you can do it, because without that belief, it's going to be really, really difficult to get better. So that belief is really important, and not giving up. Like I said, IBS is not a life sentence, and your gut is incredibly resilient. There's so much research coming up now, and there's a lot more support, much more than 10 years ago when I first, started having issues. So we are very lucky to live in a time that we do now. And yeah, that's all kind of like, I wanted to just give, a little bit of hope, because there is a lot of hope, and you can always reach out, ask a question, and I'll try my best to answer and point you in the right direction, because that's really what I do. I don't diagnose, but I can guide you into where to what step to take next. But remember that you are the one who has that control, and no matter what, you never listen. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to your doctor. Listen to your body. That is really what's going to be your guiding light, and you're really just your compass. That's it. That's all I wanted to share, and just thank everyone for tuning in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alessia, for spending your evening, because it's very late in Dubai right now. And I think this was a fantastic conversation, and I hope that if you are watching, that you got something out of this, and you got some good steps on what you can do to heal your own gut, and directions and things like that. One of the things that we did talk about was about self-care and dealing with some of the issues that you have that are underlying, that could be affecting your health overall. And so, as a lovely end, Anthony Klova owns this women's page. And what you may or may not understand is Anthony is heavily into self-care and taking care of who you are, and really paying attention to your own needs. And it's not about being selfish. It's about saying, me too. Me too. I need to be paying attention. And so in the chat, I dropped the link to Anthony's self-care group. It's Self-Care Saturday. And over in his page, because he's got lots of pages, he's amazing. You're really going to get some of the steps and the guidance that you need to help really focus on your health overall, but especially taking care of yourself. And if you don't know Anthony's story, he comes from, an addiction background, and has gone through treatment and stuff. And through him healing himself, through self-care and everything, he's made some miraculous changes in his life. And he also has his knuckles tattooed self-care. So that it means a lot to him. So thank you, everyone. No, we went a little long, but it was a lot of fantastic information. So like I said, tag Alessia in the Facebook page, or drop comments in here. She's going to be a fantastic resource for answering questions, because she just built up the experience through healing her own self and working with other people. So thank you, everybody. You have a fantastic day, and we hope this was very valuable for you.